Anin, and welcome to the first tutorial in a series on Access databases. In this tutorial series, we're going to explore the very fundamental baseline features of a database and how to create the basic elements of a database. I am re-recording this lecture because the last one had terrible audio quality. Let's quick review the elements of a database. There are in the Microsoft Access, the way Access does things, they are offering us a total solution. And normally in production, in industry, you wouldn't have something like this, but Access is really great for learning how to use databases because you have all the features that you need. You have the fundamental baseline, the most important thing, which is the table. Then you can create forms, which allow you to manipulate tables in a way that's safe and doesn't cause damage to your data. Then you can have queries, which allow you to search and sort your table data. And then you can pull reports, which are nicely formatted for printing. We are going to today create our tables for our database. We're going to create a database of vinyl records, which is, so it's a table with records of records. So remember, a row is called a record in a database. Here's our schema. We're going to build three tables. An artist table, which is going to have just an ID number for each artist and then their text name. So it's like, think of it as just like a handle, just a list of the artists that are included in your collection. Then we're going to have a list of genres, and it's the same thing. It just has two fields, an ID number, and then the name. Finally, then there's the big one. The big table is going to have all of our actual albums. It's going to have the ID number for each album, the name of the album, the year it was released, and then an ID number pointing back to an artist, and then one pointing to genre. Let's begin by creating a brand new Access database. I have the newest version, so it's going to look a little bit different from what you have. There are reasons for that. They've changed it a little bit in recent years. We're going to call this records. Yes, I want to replace the existing file. We're starting from scratch. This is Access. Right now, what it did was it opened a file, it created it, and it created an initial table. So this left-hand sidebar is where you'll see all of your objects, your current objects in your database. This will show the object that you're currently working on. And then the ribbon will have a number of different tools. The ribbon here is very different from the ribbon in other Microsoft products. But I mean, it's like the same basic idea, but it's not going to have similar tooling in it because databases are very, very specific in what it is that they're supposed to do. One of the things that I do want you guys to do while we work through these tutorials is just bear with me. The thing about databases is they're really confusing until you have a clearer idea of the whole picture. Once the whole picture becomes clear and you have all of the components in place, the whole thing makes a lot more sense. So just bear with me, and this will all make sense in the end. So let's start with our table. The first table we're going to build will be our artist table. So what do we need? We need an ID, but we're going to change it. We're going to change this from just ID. Notice it gives us one field already, which is just an ID field. We're going to call this artist ID. Field names have to be one word. That is, they cannot have spaces in them. So usually the common convention is to use what we call camel case, where you take all the words in the name and smush them together and then capitalize relevant letters. So like in this case, I'm capitalizing the A, the I, and the D. Hit enter, and there I have it. Next, I want to add another field, and you can do that over here. So this is going to create, so column 1 is going to be for IDs. Column 2 here will be for, this is going to be short text. Remember, every field in a database table has to be a specific type. It has to you have to define the type, and it has to be very specific. So that's the only kind of data that can go in that field. If you try to put a number in a text field, it'll just get treated like text. If you try to put text in a number field, it'll throw an error and it will reject that input. So we're going to click short text, and we're going to call this artist name. Again, camel case it, one word, no spaces. Okay, so that's our database, our first table created. Let's save it by hitting the little disk icon at the top, and we're just going to call this artists. Enter. So there's our artists table. We're going to be inside this table fields tab up here. So these are our two context tabs for doing stuff inside of tables. So we're going to go to table fields, and we're going to swap over to like a backstage view. So we're going to hit this view button, which looks like a protractor and a ruler. And this shows us our table schema. Like this shows us what this table looks like in behind the scenes. And so let's look at a couple of things. One, this first one has this little icon right here that looks like a key. And that's because it is. This has been defined as our primary key for this table. The primary key is the handle that you would use that's kind of like it's what the table, it's what Access uses behind the scenes to index that table. And it's also what you'll use to reference records in this table from other tables. So one thing I like to do is put in the description that this is the primary key. And that's it. We'll save it. We'll close this table. And then we'll work on our next one. For the next one, I think we'll just create our big table. And if you look in the tutorial text, here is our description, our field list for this table. I'm just going to stick this on my other screen. We go to the Create tab, and we're going to go to the table design. We're not going to just create a table, a blank table. We're going to go into the design, which is that backstage view, so we can just start working in here. This is kind of the best place to do this. So we're going to start with our album ID. That's the field name. That's going to be a auto number. And this is going to be our primary key. This means that this number will automatically be generated. So it'll start with 1, and it'll move up to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to have our album name. And that's going to be a short text, and that doesn't need a description. We're going to have release date, and this will be a number. Using number instead of a date time. You can use date time. There's a way to make it work. When I was creating these tutorials, I was having trouble with it, so I said, let's just use a number, because then I can really easily say, okay, fetch me a list of all the albums that were released after 1982 or something like that. So you can do those kinds of searches much more easily with a number. You can do it with dates too, but it was being persnickety when I did it, so I just used a number because it works okay. Artist, okay. So the next two fields are going to be references to the other tables that will be in our database. So artist ID, this will be also a number. And this is going to be referencing an entry in the artist's table. So we're going to describe it as a foreign key. So it's going to be a key from another table. So we call it a foreign key. And then genre ID, a number, and another foreign key. And that is our schema for this table. We're going to save, and we're going to call it albums. Oh, cancel. We forgot album ID needs to be designated as our primary key. So that adds that there. So the button's right here. Now we'll save it again as albums, enter, and now it'll work. That's what that error was. It was saying that you don't have a primary key. One thing I want to quick change. So I'm going to close albums and open the artists table and go back into the backstage view. I want to, normally you would just leave this as auto number because it's really nice to do. And if you're building this from scratch, but we're going to be importing a lot of data that already has numbers and references to other items in the other tables. So we need to do this correctly. Auto number needs to be number. because we already have the numbers of those artists and they're very specifically defined, and we don't want to mess this up when we import our data from an external source. So we're going to change this to number for now, and it'll just make it easier to import our data. Save, and yeah, so just bear with me on this one, and then we'll close this. We're going to create one more table. We're going to go to table design. This will be our genres table. Genre ID. This one is just going to be a number. Remember, primary key. And we'll make it our primary key by clicking this. Next, we'll say genre name. Short text, and that's it. So that's the whole thing. Save. Genres. Enter. Excellent. So that's it. That's our 3 tables sorted, our 3 tables done, and we are ready to go for the next tutorial.